Mm-hmm. All right, because Alexandra Alexeyevna has told me that you have had some questions about some materials that are uploaded to MS Teams. So most of the materials that I also post or upload to MS Teams are supplementary. So there are some slides from the lecture. And most other materials, such as the ones that I uploaded last time, they are supplementary. So if you feel like reading them, you are highly recommended. But if you feel that you understand all the concepts from what we discussed during the lectures with you, there is no need to read the primary sources. But if you feel like doing that, you have those links, and you may use your time to read. So we have discussed with you, if you remember, the evolution of marketing last time. So those various approaches from 1.0 to 5.0, and by the way, one of the students have also uploaded the full version, the full edition of the latest book by Philip Kotler and his co-authors on marketing 5.0. So that's good, and we can also read or simply scan this book. So let's remember a little bit about that approach. So what do you think about it? This transition from marketing 1.0 to 5.0 and all those stages. What do you think about this approach? Is it realistic? Is it really explaining what is happening with the companies and their marketing approaches? Just wanted to hear your opinion about that. Mm-hmm. Come on, there are 40 people in the group. You should have at least some understanding of those concepts, or maybe it's hard to remember them, but still.
Actually, I like this system of approaches because we all know that the society is changing, and the ways of selling also should be changed. And I suppose we also know about different generations, and so in different changes in society, and marketers should come with it and develop. So I suppose it's right.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Uliana. You have touched upon the topic of generations, right? So we will also talk a little bit about that when we talk about segmentation. Okay, any other ideas? Mm-hmm.
I also think it seems pretty realistic because, like, when it's only started, people, I think, was only caring about how to sell more, and then with like times, people realize that they need to change their auditory and so on.
Mm-hmm. Right, thank you very much, Arina. Okay, so please don't be shy to express your opinion, because this is the difference between video lectures and synchronic lectures, right? We have an opportunity to discuss some things, and maybe if you disagree with some approaches, you have the right to do that. And if you have good argumentation, we can also discuss that. Yeah, so you should not forget that basically any classification, any approach that is aimed at generalizing things, it has some limitations, of course. So, and if we talk about this transition from different stages in marketing evolution, we should understand that various companies are using various approaches, right? That may be a mix of those stages, for instance, so some kind of fusion of approaches. Or yeah, it does not mean that most of the companies have reached stage 4.0 or stage 5.0. So in some industries, for some geographical markets, right? We're not talking that much about international marketing in this course, but in some geographical markets, for sure, most of the companies have not reached those stages that are only being forecasted, right, for the future of the marketing profession. Okay. I will now share my screen, and we will come to the presentation that was aimed for today. So we have finished talking about the SOSTAC model, right? So a very simple framework that may be used not only in marketing, but generally in some planning activities, some strategic management activities, for instance. So we have various stages according to which you will need to do your project tasks. Those stages are interconnected, and you have those, you remember probably those questions that will help you to understand the essence of each stage of the planning framework, so of marketing framework. I know that you have already discussed the instruments of situation analysis with your seminar instructor. We will only briefly cover them in the lecture, and I will just point out some elements that you should focus on. So, you know, repetition is the mother of learning. We have various terms that describe the situation analysis. But it's important that situation analysis is always the ground for your further planned activities. Have you been doing situation analysis in other courses already?
Yes. For example, last year in our management course, we also did SWOT analysis.
Okay. Well, of course, SWOT analysis is one of the instruments, right, that you may use for situation analysis, but in order to make correct decisions, and you need analysis in order to come to certain goals, so that you set forward, and then some tactics. You need to do a deep and broad analysis, and you understand that there are two sides of analysis, so external and internal analysis. Both of them are highly important. And I would just like to warn you from thinking that, well, it's so boring. So situation analysis is boring, and I mean, we're doing it for most courses. But it's true that you will be doing that in most courses, because this is the ground for decision making, right? Without proper analysis, your decisions will be detached from reality, will be detached from the macro environment, will be detached from your customers, and so on. And then your business becomes very risky, right? And the resources that you invest in your further actions will be lost because you have come to wrong decisions, right? So it's highly important to pay enough time, even especially when you do your own real life projects, right? When you maybe decide to do some entrepreneurial project. So it's important to invest enough time to do situation analysis. And for instance, when we did latest project with the Cartier brand last autumn, it was the essence of the project actually to do the situation analysis of the St. Petersburg market, right? So we analyzed most of those elements in terms of the industry. So when we talk about external environment or external audit, we talk about the industry, which is more like specific to your field of operations, right? When you, for example, analyze your competitors, when you analyze, well, place, right? So distribution channels, existing channels which you can potentially use, with whom you can potentially partner to distribute your goods. If necessary, you also think about supply chains, because it's highly important that there are no problems with the supply, right? And that there is enough potential for your suppliers to supply with certain goods that you need in order to reach to meet the demand that exists in the market, right? It's highly important to analyze customers. And this is, so for example, a project that we did for Cartier is a real life example of the need of the situation analysis. And also when we, for instance, another example, when we talk about some educational products, for instance, when HSE wants to launch a new educational degree program, or some adult program, so short course. We also do situation analysis. We also do SWOT analysis, and well, but SWOT analysis is of course one of the instruments. So just for you once again to emphasize, situation analysis consists of external and internal, and different levels of external analysis is also scanning macro environment and scanning the particular industry in which you operate. So do not neglect this important step in your project work. Try to do it in a very detailed way. So situation analysis does not boil down to those instruments that you are familiar with. It's a proper use of description of each of those elements, right? So customers existing in this particular market, not necessarily your customers, right? But generally. Also, when you talk about internal analysis, you should keep in mind that you kind of have to bear in mind two perspectives. The one perspective is the look outside, from the outside on your company, right? For instance, what are your weaknesses in the mind of customers, right? So you should kind of think of their perspective, because there might be a gap between the reality, so what indeed are your strengths and weaknesses, and what the public thinks about your company, right? So you should take into consideration both perspectives. For instance, you might realize that this is your strength, but you find difficulties in communicating this strength to your audience, right? So they might not realize it, that this is your strength, and then you might need to work on that. So again, a repetition. So those are some analysis, situation analysis techniques. Probably you are more aware of PEST and SWOT, and and you have covered them in your seminars. I will briefly also talk about Michael Porter's 5 forces analysis. Maybe you will also find this instrument useful for your situation analysis. So PESTEL analysis is an instrument of what level of analysis?
External.
External, macro environment, right? So we talk about macro environmental factors that affect basically the whole society and that are particularly important for your business, for your industry, right? So this is an expert technique, as most managerial techniques are. Probably you have also used this scheme that helps you to evaluate the importance of factors. So in this scheme, you identify the likelihood of some factors happening and the how it is going to affect your project, right? So the risk, the likelihood of some factor happening, and the impact of change. So how important, how drastic it will be if it happens. And what I want to point out is that when you do PESTEL analysis, it's not only the enumeration of factors, right? It's not enough. So you have to evaluate and highlight the most important factors. And a good approach, you see this column on the right, is also to think straight away about strategic response to those most important factors, right? So you may think about the strategic response of how you can reduce certain risks, right? When it has not yet happened. And you may also think about strategic response if this factor takes place, if it happens, right? What will your company do? How it is going to react? And obviously, we can predict certain risks, but in reality, we see it for 2 years already. For most businesses, it was not possible to predict such kinds of risks. But still, we should focus on those that are able to predict. And again, to do that, we need information. We need to scan information. We need to read various reports concerning industry, concerning governmental regulations, concerning some technological developments, right? So we need to be informed. And only then we do pest analysis. So this is kind of a conclusion that you make based on detailed analysis. So, are you familiar with this instrument, Michael Porter's 5 forces analysis?
Yes.
Yes, good. Can you let me know what is the idea of it?
The idea of this analysis is finding the position of the company in the market.
What do you mean finding a position? Don't be shy. I'm not evaluating your answers. I'm sorry, I even do not see your names when I have the demonstration of the screen. I see only your picture, but no name.
Okay, in saying position, I mean the how this company is strong, or the strong company, or any opportunities for this company, or any oh, okay, here the Arsalan wrote in the chat. I think that's a more short and good answer.
Okay, thank you. Amir Arsalan, can you please explain what you mean? This is a good definition, but can you explain in simple words?
Yes, of course. Well, when we say analyzing company's competitive environment, we mean the number and power of a company's competitive rivals or potential new market entrants, and even possibly suppliers or the customers, in more details, and how this influences a company's profitability over time.
And companies, profitability in general, and also industry's attractiveness, right? So how attractive is, especially if you are analyzing it when you're thinking whether to enter a particular industry, you analyze how attractive it is, right? And thank you. So you see here they are called like 5 forces, and you analyze kind of how powerful they are, those forces. How much pressure do they put on players in this industry? And there are 3 elements on the horizontal axis and 2 on the vertical axis. So suppliers, competitors and buyers, and potential entrants and substitutes. So this is an instrument that is used not to scan macro environment, but to think of your particular industry, right? A bit lower level of analysis, so to say. So, for instance, you analyze the threat of new entrants, right? And this is also a strategic instrument, and again, it is mostly based on expert analysis, that is based on, information and reports and competence of experts in a particular industry. So you evaluate the strength of those forces as, for instance, low, below average, average, above average, and high. For instance, what is the threat of new entrants in this particular industry? What do you think it usually depends on? For instance, new entrants. Well, for instance, when we say that the threat of new entrants is quite high, what does it depend on?
Maybe whether is there a gap in the market?
Right, very lucrative market, we can say, and for instance, very few big players in the market, right? What else?
The business type is easy to launch.
Yeah, good. Some entry barriers, right? Maybe you need investments, right? Huge investments to enter the industry, and that will slow down the speed of new entrants coming to the market. And then if the speed is low, you will have more time to adapt. If you will feel that there are some big players, yes, patents, right. So maybe you need some prior patents or some prior R&D, developments before you launch a certain business. Okay, then you will also analyze the power of suppliers, right? In some markets, it's quite easy to find and switch from different suppliers, but in different in other industries, it's not. For instance, if there are only few suppliers in a particular industry, and this particular I don't know, raw material is highly important for your business, then their power over you and other companies will be big, right? Will be high. And then this will lead you to some strategic decisions that in your business approach, you will need mostly to focus on establishing good relationships, long-term relationships with suppliers. And you might need to invest your resources on that. Then also buyers, right? In some markets, in B2B, for instance, there might be a limited number of buyers for your product. It's much easier with consumer brands. You just need to effectively outline the segment and then understand the segment well, and then also, communicate with them properly. But in some industries, it's indeed, we find limited number. For instance, for some machinery, right? So for, I don't know, airplane construction industry, for instance, there are only few buyers who you would be able to supply. And then again, their power over you will be great. They will be able to dictate terms, and you need to invest more and focus more on relationships with them. So what are the ways to reduce the power of customers, of buyers. How you can work on that?
Make your product more wait, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Making your product more qualitative and unique than other your competitors.
Mm-hmm. Okay, right. To introduce some loyalty programs, right? It's also usually we say that the more cooperative your buyers are, the more strength they have. So the more well organized they are, or if they are some kind of detached. For instance, if you talk about some community that share values, they are well organized. They will have more power over you if they collaborate, rather than if they act independently. And yeah, for instance, there are some trends appearing and related to societal changes, for instance, environmentally friendly behavior. And there is this trend rising among your buyers, and they want you to switch from the package that is not recycled to more eco-friendly options, right? If there is this trend rising among your buyers in this particular industry, and their bargaining power is high, they have many alternatives to switch from you to other players, then they will affect your business decisions. And also we should not forget about substitutes. So substitute product. Can you give an example of a substitute product?
For example, we can travel by train or by plane. So train and plane, they are substitutes.
Great. When we think about substitute product, we focus on the need, right? That this product is trying to satisfy. So we in this particular case, we focus on the need to travel, on the need for movement, right? And there are various ways how to do that, but they're not, direct competitors. And also, if we again come back to this idea of healthy lifestyle, for instance, it's highly important to take that into consideration when we talk about food products, right? Because people might be eager to switch not from your brand to competitor brand, but to substitutes. For instance, from Coca-Cola to water. The consumption of water, of substitute product, is increasing, and that is affecting all producers of soft drinks, especially those that are not considered to be that healthy, right? But if, for instance, a competitor brand, Pepsi, would launch an effective marketing campaign, communications campaign, that will mostly affect competitor brands, right? But if there are some substitute alternatives that will affect all players in the industry, and especially when we talk about the development of new technologies, we should take that into consideration, that those risks of substitutes might be low or high. Like 3D technologies, for instance, they are predicted to. It's not happening that widely nowadays, but still they are predicted to substitute many things in various industries, in production, for instance. So this is again a strategic managerial instrument based on the information you priorly learn about the environment. You focus on those elements and decide which ones are most important, most powerful in your industry, and think of how you can focus on that in your further strategy and tactics. And of course, SWOT analysis, you're very much familiar with that. I will just highlight that this is not the instrument you start from, right? This is again some kind of conclusion, and also because it includes both sides of analysis, it's typically an instrument that is used at the end of your situation analysis. And the proper approach is not only to create this matrix with various factors, but to think of the most appropriate strategy, right? So whether you're going to focus on a combination of those elements that you have outlined, for instance, your strategy might be very bold, so heading to be a leader, or you might prefer for some time to focus on your weaknesses and trying to minimize them, and again try to avoid the risks of some threats affecting your business. So don't forget about this step. So making conclusions based on the factors that you outline. So I have also prepared a list of some sources which you might use and consult. The first three reports are mostly important for international marketing, right? Sometimes students think of in their projects, they think of entering new markets with an existing brand, entering new foreign markets, if we talk about international marketing. So in this situation, you may find useful to consult those reports on, for example, competitiveness of certain markets, on the investment opportunities for particular markets. Also, there used to be an interesting report done by the World Bank. It was called Doing Business Report, and they were analyzing the ease, so how easy it is to do business in various countries. They were analyzing again, those environmental factors in terms of taxes, in terms of regulations, and that was quite an interesting report to see, well, in which countries it's easier to start a business. But when I was preparing for today's lecture, I was surprised to find out that they stopped doing that report, so doing business report, although they were doing that for decades. And so they switched to some other approaches in presenting data, but do not create those reports anymore. But you can consult those sources, maybe in other projects, not necessarily in marketing. There are also reports concerning the economic consequences of Corona for various industries. You may find it interesting. If you talk, I'll just show you. If you are interested in European countries, you may use the statistics of Eurostat. And here you can easily browse statistics by theme. I, for instance, like those dashboards, right? When you can use statistics based on population and some social related things. For instance, you may click this statistics on youth, and you will find some data on youth and their participation in, for instance, cultural activities and so on. So yeah, play and browse it depending on your goals of your project. Another instrument I recommend you to use is Google Trends. Have you worked with Google Trends?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so most of you, or maybe some of you, have used it, right? So basically, it reflects, right, the searches being made in particular locations. So so those of you who have used it, how do you think it may be helpful?
Well, basically, it leaves our hands open to search anything, any word, to see how many times it's being searched on Google, which is currently the #1 search engine in the world. So by searching about products and checking their trends, we can see which markets are seeking or have kind of demand for this product, and people are wondering to know more about it.
Right. How else? So this reflects basically the interest, right, towards certain ideas, certain brands. If you decide to look for the trends concerning a brand, so I will just briefly show this tool, maybe to those of you who have not used it yet. So I just wanted to focus that you may use search for a term, so this particular term that you are interested in, or a topic which is broader, and there is a difference in the output of what Google Trends give you, because of course some search terms are united in a particular topic, and also there are language differences, right? When various search terms are united in a particular topic in different languages. So So it's different, and you may choose depending on your aims what you will find most useful, whether to search for a term or for a topic, right? So you may play with this instrument. You may choose location that you are interested in. You may choose different time periods starting from 2004 and see the dynamics, right? And the dynamics is relative, right? So the highest amount of searches is reflected as 100, and all the other spots are relative to this highest amount of searches. And of course, since locations are different in terms of the population and in terms of the size, so this amount is reflected relative to the total number of searches done in a particular territory at a particular time. So, for instance, how searches, what is the search volume in Irkutsk at a particular period of time done in general, and the share of this particular search in this particular period of time. So that's why we can compare, right? The output that is given by different locations, and we can compare, for instance, Irkutsk with Moscow or Murmansk and so on. So you see here some related topics, and yeah, we see automotive industry, right? So sport, because of the particular car model. We see related queries. We can play here again with looking at the rising queries. So those are maybe new, or those that are maybe in the focus of attention. So maybe they were not searched for in a previous period of time, and we can also see the top terms. We can here change again and look at the scale of a city. So what is interesting is that you can compare, right? You can compare, for instance, search volume done for your brand and your competitor brand, or you can compare interest towards certain subcategories within your particular field of interest. If you are thinking about what is trendy, right? What people are interested in, you should think of what they search for, right? For instance, football search term and hockey, right? We will of course see that the search volume for football is higher, right? You see comparison here. Obviously, football is more popular. So this is the past 12 months, right? And then we will see here sub-region. We will see, for instance, globally, worldwide. We will see country comparison. Yeah, so quite interesting. We may structure the results according to the search term we're most focused on. By the way, you see here, right, those interested in hockey. So, and by looking at this graph, you may also see the particular peak periods and periods of decline, and you may also think what made people become more interested in a particular item or less interested in a particular item. Maybe there were some external events affecting this interest. So there are plenty of ways how you can use Google Trends. In general, when you have some creative idea, for instance, and you're not sure whether your particular location is interested in this thing or not, you may check your hypothesis, or you may check for search terms that are better, right? For you to use in your communications, in your digital marketing, and use those search terms that are more popular among your location. And again, compare it with some external circumstances. If you think about the drops and rises, right? What has affected those changes in the interest? We will not look at this link, but basically the same. There are some reports concerning coronavirus. You may find it also interesting to browse. And of course, Google year in search by country. For instance, year in search 2021 in Russia. You may see what were Russians more interested in the previous year. We can do the same for Yandex, right? It's basically very similar, and the speaker, the student who has previously commented on the ways to use Google Trends, has mentioned it correctly, that Google is the dominant search engine globally. But interestingly, Russia is one of those few countries where Google is not the dominant search engine. At least it was like that one year ago or a couple of years ago. Maybe the situation has changed. If you find the statistics, please let me know. But in general, we rely more on Yandex. So taking into account the specifics, you might find more useful to rely on Yandex, or you may use both and compare the results. So those things help you to define trends. This is reflected in the name, right? Google Trends. So trends in search volume, and that reflects what we are preoccupied with, right? What is in our mind. And another instrument that I personally find useful, Brand Watch. So Brand Watch is a company that provides services related to the analytics of social networks mainly. And they produce very interesting reports, which may be downloaded for free. And they are 100% marketing related. They mostly, because the main data is coming from social networks, they mostly explain trends in consumer behavior. So all those reports, they can be viewed, they can be used, and you may put references on those reports. For instance, consumer trends for 2022. So quite general reports are produced and may be used by you if you put references, or quite specific. For instance, here you will find trends in the luxury watch sector, or food trends, or for instance, applications, how we use emojis and emotions. Quite interesting insights may be found there. So what else? Specific reports concerning various regions may be found here. Trends in retail, right? Also, they produce regularly reports concerning customer experience. So what brands produce well, better opportunities, unique opportunities for enhancing customer experience. Environmentally related reports, right? So a lot of interesting information, quite easily available for you here, related to social networks, related to particular industries, related to particular regions in the world. Also, they have some, not so many, but some brand comparisons. For instance, a report comparing Nike and Reebok. So also quite interesting if you focus on those brands or on this sphere. I'm sure that you may have your tricks, your insights on valuable sources on information. And if you would like to do that, you may share them in the chat now or later in this MS Teams chat, share it with us. But you should keep in mind that those sources should be also reliable, right? It's highly important that they are reliable. And for instance, if we talk about Brandwatch, they are considered in the industry to be reliable, and you may easily cite their reports and judge of them as being reliable. Forrester also, for instance, is producing various reports and various consumer primary analysis, consumer surveys, for instance, and they are also considered to be a reliable source of information. So I think that was that was it for the situation analysis. So we will now pass on to a very short bit of the SOSTAC model, which is called objectives, right? But it is highly important element in the structure of any planning activities. So objectives come second, right? First, we focus on the situation analysis, and what we will request you to do is to produce this detailed situation analysis, both external and internal, and then make some conclusions, right? And I have already told you that usually we look for some opportunities that we identify as a result of situation analysis, or we identify some problems, right? So either opportunities or problems, or they may be interconnected, right? You see some problem, and at the same time there is an opportunity connected with the solution of that problem, and you kind of focus on that. So you do the situation analysis, you make some conclusions, and based on those conclusions, we would like you to set objectives. And they can be quite general, quite descriptive, kind of what the direction that you will focus on. And this is kind of the general direction for you to focus on. But then your objectives, they should not be numerous. They should be like 3-4 objectives that you hope to reach through your actions that you suggest in your marketing plan. But they should be very specific. We will also talk about that. So this typical objective for any business, right, to grow sales, to grow market share, it can be reached differently, right? It can be reached through focusing on distribution, on promotion, and so on. And then you will think of some specific objectives that will help you to reach the overall goal that you set forward. Another one is adding value, right? So adding value to customer experience. Given, of course, this is can be considered as a means for growing sales, right? For increasing profit of your company. But it's quite still useful to identify it separately. And then you will think of what will help you to add value to your consumers. Maybe your objectives will be related to learning more about your customers, right? And then you may focus on database marketing, on growing, enlarging your database of consumers. You may be focusing on reviews depending on your aims. So listening to your customers, getting some insights, this again may be reached through different ways. Brand-specific, brand-related metrics. Maybe you focus on brand image, right? On how your brand is perceived by your consumers, and you will focus on increasing, for instance, brand preference for your brand over your competitor brands, because generally brand preference for your brand is low. Sometimes you might need to not only focus on increasing your sales, but on well, cutting some budgets, right? On reducing costs, and that will be again a good solution for you based on the conclusions that you make from situation analysis. Or another idea for your objective is also, it is also, of course, a means, right, on how to for instance, increase loyalty or to increase sales. But very often nowadays, it's not enough to be an ordinary brand, right? To create ordinary experience that is comparable with your competitors, but sometimes you will need to think of a so-called wow effect, creating a wow effect through introduction of some novelty or enhancement, something that is out of the box, right? So maybe this is a good way for your brand, because your current audience is kind of bored and tired, and you feel that you have not been doing anything great and unexpected for a long time. Of course, when we talk about objectives, so those objectives that will be in your marketing plans should be corresponding to the SMART principle, right? So they should be very specific, They should not be interpreted in different ways. They should be concrete and specific. They should be measurable. So for instance, I have this example, increasing brand awareness. This is not a good example of setting an objective in your particular marketing plan, right? You should be very specific in terms of how much you want to increase your brand awareness. Then, of course, they should be achievable. They should set higher goals for your project, but at the same time, they should be realistic. They should be achievable, relevant. So again, in the brackets, you see different words for these abbreviations. So there are hundreds of interpretations of the SMART principle, but I think that it's not so important that you really focus too much on this every word that may be understood with the SMART principle, but you understand in general the approach to objectives, right? To setting correct objectives. So relevant to me usually means that it is tightly connected with your business, with your situation. So they should be relevant to the opportunity or problem that you identify. It should not be detached. It should not come out of the blue. So it should be relevant for your business, for the current situation, and for the results of your analysis. And time bound, of course. So you may first of all think that they should be set for a particular time frame, of course, but also I like the word timely here because everything should be done in the right time, right? So some idea or some objective that you set forward may be irrelevant and not timely, right? Because the customers are experiencing other changes rather than you predict, and this is the wrong time to introduce a certain idea at this particular moment. Maybe you should postpone your objective until the market becomes more ready to accept your idea, what you suggest. So time bound and timely. So everything should be done at the right time. And finally, do not forget about the kind of big objectives, so what we call mission and vision. So everything should be very logical, right? Very well connected to each other, each step of your project. And as a company, maybe you should start with formulating your mission and vision, and then, of course, those objectives that you set forward for a shorter period of time, they should correspond to the mission and vision of your company. For instance, if your company is caring a lot about your consumers, and your mission is related to I don't know, making life of your consumers easier, of course the objectives should be in tune with this understanding of the mission of your company. So this flow of ideas and conclusions, so starting from situation analysis, then moving to the results, the conclusions of your situation analysis, so to those opportunities or problems that you identify, and then focusing your objectives on those conclusions, making them correspond with the SMART principle, and then also corresponding with the general objectives of the company, so mission and vision. Probably it's a wrong word, right? So the big objectives, but yeah, so focusing on mission and vision, it's highly important, and this is what we, me and Alexandra Alexeyevna, are looking for in your projects. So all those decisions that you suggest should be well grounded and highly connected with each other. So usually after each topic I have some sources and further readings. As I have mentioned earlier, it's not obligatory to read them, but they are just the majority of sources that I have used for preparing this lecture, but all of them are available at HSC database. And if you feel that, for instance, you have not understood well the 5 forces analysis, you may consult this source. And this first source by Chaffee and Smith is in general one of the key textbooks for you in this course, so you may consult them as well. So we have 5 minutes left, and we have come to the next topic, which is related to the strategic element of the marketing planning framework. But I don't think that we're going to start it in the very last moment of the lecture. So next time we're going to talk about the so-called STP process. We're going to talk about segmentation, so how we can, and based on which variables and criteria we can segment the market. Then how to choose the most appropriate segments in the market, so targeting. And we will talk about the concept of positioning, what it is, how to create a positioning map, and yeah, what are the elements for effective positioning. How to create an effective positioning for an organization. So I think that's it for today. But we still have a couple of minutes left, and if you have any questions, you may ask them. If not, I thank you for today's participation. I will just also stop the recording.